It all began with one small act of kindness, an act so simple that most would have overlooked it, yet it would unravel into a story that left an entire town stunned. Alicia Monroe was 24 and already worn down by life's demands. She worked long shifts at the Riverside Grill, a modest diner near the edge of town where the river curved beneath the old steel bridge. The diner wasn't fancy, its red leather booths were cracked, its jukebox hadn't worked in years, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. But for Alicia, it was a lifeline. The paycheck wasn't much, but it kept her one-bedroom apartment paid for and helped her support her younger sister back home. Alicia was known by customers for her warmth. She never let her exhaustion show, though she carried it deep in her bones. With her long hair tied back and her faded apron around her waist, she moved from table to table as though she'd been born to serve others. She remembered every regular's order and never once complained when the rush left her aching feet and blistered hands. But behind her smile was a struggle she rarely spoke of. Her father had passed away unexpectedly, and her mother's health was failing. Alicia sent home part of every paycheck, scraping by herself because she believed family always came first. She often whispered to herself that one day she'd trade in her apron for a college degree, but for now, survival came before dreams. On a chilly Thursday morning, as rain tapped against the diner windows, an older man walked in. His jacket was worn, his shoes scuffed, and his tired eyes darted around the diner before he quietly slid into a corner booth. Alicia approached with her notepad, offering her usual gentle greeting. "Good morning, sir. Can I get you started with something?" The man hesitated, then asked softly, "How much for just a cup of coffee?" $2, Alicia answered. He nodded, pulling out a few crumpled bills and a handful of coins. Slowly, he counted until he had exactly enough for that single cup. Nothing more. Alicia's heart sank. She had seen hunger before, seen the way people looked at menus when they couldn't afford more than the cheapest item. This man wasn't just thirsty. He was hungry. She leaned down slightly and said, "Tell you what, how about I bring you some eggs and toast, too? My treat." His eyes widened. "Oh no, miss, I couldn't ask you to do that." "You're not asking," Alicia replied with a smile. "It's just breakfast. Everyone deserves a meal in the morning." Minutes later, she placed a plate of warm scrambled eggs, buttered toast, and hot coffee in front of him. His hands trembled as he picked up the fork, his voice nearly breaking as he whispered, "Thank you. You have no idea what this means to me." Alicia gave a small nod and moved on to the next table. To her, it wasn't about charity. It was about humanity. What she didn't know was that this man was not just another stranger passing through. For weeks, rumors had floated through the Riverside Grill staff that the mysterious owner of the diner chain planned to visit undercover. Nobody knew when or how. Most dismissed it as gossip, but the truth was that Franklin Ward, the reclusive businessman behind Ward Hospitality, had a habit of testing his restaurants this way. He wanted to see how his employees treated people when no one was watching. That morning, the man Alicia fed was Franklin Ward himself. Franklin had risen from poverty to success. He had known what it felt like to go hungry, to be invisible, to be treated as if his worth was measured by the coins in his pocket. So when Alicia set down that plate without hesitation, something stirred deep inside him. But Franklin didn't reveal himself that day. Not yet. Instead, he ate quietly, savoring not just the food but the compassion behind it. He left a generous tip tucked beneath his saucer and slipped out unnoticed. Yet kindness, Alicia was about to discover, sometimes comes with a price. That afternoon, as the rain cleared and the diner slowed, Deborah Lang, the manager, summoned Alicia to the cramped back office. Deborah was known for her sharp tongue and her obsession with rules. She believed numbers mattered more than people and profit was the only measure of success. "Alicia," Deborah began sternly, arms folded, "did you give away food this morning?" Alicia hesitated. "Yes, but it was only. Do you realize what that costs us?" Deborah snapped, her eyes narrowing. This is a business, not a shelter. Every egg, every slice of bread, it all adds up. You think we can afford to feed every sad soul that walks in here? Alicia tried to steady her voice. He was hungry. He only had money for coffee. I couldn't just turn him away. That's not your decision to make. Deborah slammed her hand against the desk. I won't have my staff bleeding us dry because of misplaced sympathy. You're done here. Hand over your apron, you're fired. The word rang in Alicia's ears like a verdict. Fired. Not for being late. Not for breaking dishes. Fired for showing kindness. Her throat tightened, but pride stopped her from begging. With trembling hands, she untied her apron and placed it neatly on the desk. When she stepped outside, the clouds had parted and sunlight streamed across the wet pavement. But inside her chest, the world felt heavier than ever. What Alicia didn't know, what no one knew, was that her single act of compassion had already been seen by the one man whose opinion mattered most. And by the next day, when the truth came out, it would leave everyone stunned. That night, Alicia lay awake in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling as the hum of her old refrigerator filled the silence. She replayed the scene in her head over and over, Deborah's sharp words, the look of disappointment in her eyes when she untied her apron, the final slam of the office door. She wanted to believe she had done the right thing, but fear pressed against her chest. Rent was due in 2 weeks. Her mom had called earlier, needing money for prescriptions. Her younger sister had asked about saving for college applications. Now, without a job, all of that felt like a dream crumbling before it even began. By morning, Alicia still hadn't found sleep, but she forced herself out of bed and into clean clothes. She walked through town, resume in hand, asking every cafe, every store, every restaurant if they were hiring. Most said no. A few took her resume politely but offered only empty promises. Meanwhile, back at Riverside Grill, Franklin Ward returned. Unlike the day before, he came dressed in a crisp button-down shirt and clean slacks. His silver hair was combed neatly, and though he still carried the quiet humility of a man who had once known hunger, there was a new presence in his step. When he walked through the doors, the staff exchanged puzzled glances. He wasn't a regular. He didn't look like someone who belonged in a small-town diner. Even Deborah noticed immediately, smoothing her blouse as she approached. Good morning, she greeted him with her practiced professional smile. Table for one. Franklin's eyes scanned the room, but the face he was looking for was missing. He nodded slowly and followed her to a booth. After ordering a simple breakfast, Franklin asked casually, I was here yesterday. A young waitress served me. Tall, dark hair, kind eyes. Is she working today? Deborah's smile faltered for just a moment. No. She's no longer with us. Franklin's brows lifted slightly. No longer? Why's that? Deborah shifted uncomfortably but kept her tone sharp. She broke company policy. We run a business here. Employees can't just give away food like it's free. It sets a bad example, and frankly, it hurts our bottom line. So I had to let her go. Franklin leaned back in his booth, his expression unreadable. I see. The rest of his meal passed quietly, but by the time he finished, Franklin's decision was already made. The following morning, Alicia was sitting at her tiny kitchen table, staring at a stack of unpaid bills, when there was a knock at her door. She wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment she considered ignoring it. But when the knocking came again, firm yet patient, she rose and opened the door. Standing there was the same older man she had served at the diner, the man with the weary eyes and trembling hands. Except today, he looked different. His clothes were pressed, his posture straighter, and he carried an air of quiet authority. Alicia's jaw nearly dropped. You're the man from Riverside Grill. The one who only had enough for coffee. Franklin smiled faintly. That's right. My name is Franklin Ward. Alicia blinked. The name sounded familiar, but she couldn't quite place it. Seeing her confusion, Franklin continued. I own Riverside Grill. Not just that one, but every location. I've built the chain over the last 30 years. Alicia gasped softly, her hand gripping the doorframe. You're the owner. Franklin nodded. And yesterday, you showed me more compassion than I've seen in a long time. You didn't know who I was, yet you chose kindness over rules, over fear of consequence. That's rare, Alicia. Very rare. Her throat tightened. But I got fired for it. I know, Franklin said, his voice steady. And that's why I'm here. He stepped back slightly, giving her space. I want to offer you your job back. But not just that. I want to offer you something better, an opportunity. Alicia's eyes widened. Opportunity? Franklin nodded again. I'm looking for people like you. People who care about others, who see beyond the dollar signs. I've been thinking about launching a community program within my diners, something that allows us to quietly feed those who can't afford it, without humiliating them, without making it a spectacle. And I want you to be part of it. Tears welled in Alicia's eyes. She shook her head in disbelief. You'd really trust me with something like that? I wouldn't just trust you, Franklin said firmly. I'd depend on you. You've proven more in one breakfast than some people prove in years. For the first time in days, Alicia felt hope stir in her chest. But the story wasn't over. Franklin still had one more stop to make. That afternoon, he walked back into Riverside Grill, this time not as a customer but as the owner. Staff froze. Deborah, who had been wiping down the counter, turned pale as she recognized him. Mr. Ward, she stammered. I didn't know you were coming today. Franklin's eyes locked on hers, calm but sharp. That much is clear. Let's have a conversation, Ms. Lang. In your office. The diner fell silent as Franklin followed Deborah into the back, closing the door behind them. Inside the cramped office at Riverside Grill, Deborah Lang stood stiffly behind her desk, clutching a clipboard as if it could shield her. Franklin Ward sat down slowly in the chair across from her, his calm gaze never leaving hers. You fired Alicia Monroe, Franklin began, his voice steady but carrying an undeniable weight. Deborah adjusted her blouse and lifted her chin. Yes, Mr. Ward. She gave away food without permission. That's against policy. I was protecting the business. Franklin leaned forward, his hands clasped. Protecting the business, by firing the only employee who showed compassion to a hungry man? Deborah's face flushed. With respect, sir, we can't just feed anyone who walks in here looking poor. If the staff thinks it's acceptable to hand out free meals, we'll lose money. Franklin's voice sharpened. Do you know who that man was? The one Alicia helped. Deborah blinked. Some vagrant, I assumed. Franklin's eyes narrowed. That was me. I walked in here yesterday, dressed in old clothes, with barely enough to buy coffee. Alicia didn't hesitate. She gave me food without judgment, without asking for anything in return. And you, Ms. Lang, saw that act of kindness as weakness. Deborah's mouth fell open, her clipboard slipping slightly in her hands. You were the customer. I was, Franklin said firmly. And in that moment, Alicia reminded me of why I built these diners in the first place. Not just to serve food, but to serve people. Real people, with real needs. You chose profit over compassion. She chose humanity. And I'll tell you something, Ms. Lang. I would rather lose a dozen eggs than lose an employee like her. The color drained from Deborah's face. Mr. Ward, Franklin raised a hand to silence her. Save it. I don't need excuses. What I need are leaders who understand that this business isn't just about numbers on a page. It's about people, our customers and our staff. And right now, you've failed both. For a long moment, silence filled the office. Then Franklin stood, his presence towering despite his calm tone. Consider this your final warning, Deborah. I expect better. Much better. If you can't deliver, you won't be here much longer. Deborah swallowed hard and nodded, her confidence cracked. When Franklin walked out of the office, every pair of eyes in the diner turned toward him. The staff whispered, the customers sat up straighter. He cleared his throat and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. My name is Franklin Ward, he announced. I own Riverside Grill and every other location in this chain. Yesterday, one of your waitresses was fired for showing kindness to a man in need. That man was me. Gasps rippled through the diner. A cook dropped his spatula. 2 customers leaned forward, wide-eyed. Franklin continued, his voice ringing with quiet authority. Alicia Monroe treated me with dignity when she thought no one was watching. She offered me food I couldn't afford, not knowing I was the owner. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the kind of employee every business dreams of having. And today, I want you all to know, she's coming back. Not just as a waitress, but as part of a new program we'll be starting. A program to make sure that no one who walks through our doors has to feel the pain of hunger. The diner erupted in murmurs. Some clapped, others nodded with admiration. Even the regulars, hard men who rarely showed emotion, smiled at the thought. Meanwhile, across town, Alicia sat at her kitchen table, staring at a stack of applications she could barely bring herself to fill out. The knock on her door startled her. When she opened it, Franklin stood there once again, a gentle smile on his face. Alicia, he said, it's time you came back with me. Her brow furrowed. Back. But. I thought. You thought you were finished, Franklin interrupted kindly. But you're just getting started. Everyone at the diner knows the truth now. They know what you did. And I've told them you're coming back, not just as a server, but as someone who's going to help me lead something bigger. Alicia's throat tightened, tears brimming in her eyes. I don't even know what to say. Say yes, Franklin replied softly. And she did. When Alicia walked back into Riverside Grill later that day beside Franklin Ward, the staff greeted her with stunned silence at first, then with warm smiles, nods, even quiet applause. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. Not just as a waitress in a faded apron, but as someone who had made a difference. Franklin placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. This is just the beginning, Alicia. Together, we're going to make sure kindness is never punished again. The truth had finally come out, and it left everyone speechless. But for Alicia Monroe, it was more than just a revelation, it was the start of a new chapter.